Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Sharon Zambito of Sugar Ed Productions.
And I'm Dominic Palazzolo of MakeYourOwnMolds.com.
We've come together today because we want to show you the techniques to make this gorgeous cake. I'm going to share with you how to do the big fabric bow.
And I'm going to show you how to make a mold of a real brooch so we can reproduce it in sugar just like you see here on the cake. So we have a lot to show you.
So let's get started. Let me show you this beautiful brooch that I found that I asked Dominic to make a mold for me so that we could make this in sugar for our cake. Isn't that beautiful? I have no idea how to make the mold, so I'm going to let Dominic show us how to do that.
Great. So when we work on a brooch, there's a couple challenges that we have to attend to before we can really apply the silicone. And one of the things is that on the back of a brooch we have this pin, and so you can see that it doesn't sit flat. And if we pour silicone over that, the silicone's going to get underneath the brooch, and that's no fun, and you're not going to have a very good mold.
So the brooch doesn't actually lay flat on the counter.
That's
when
right.
you take the pin off, it still has a concave to it.
Yeah, exactly. It's concave. That's a better word. And so what will happen is once again, as this rises up, the silicone is going to go into that gap below it, and we don't want that to happen. So what we do, if you look on the back side, is we take the safety clay, and what this is a non-toxic, non-drying clay. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the best mold making tools that I sell. It is something that you can use for so many things, and we're going to be using a lot of safety clay in this tutorial. But what I did was I just took off pieces and I applied it to the back in order to make sure that I get a seal around the bottom or the perimeter there. So now that we've done that, what we want to do is we want to take this brooch, and if you notice, I have a bed of more safety clay, and it's thicker than the brooch is, okay? Now, I'm going to take this brooch and I'm going to push it down into the clay, allowing the pin to embed itself in the clay, so then it will finally sit flat.
And it'll be secure, it won't wiggle around.
Now, one of the things we do to help that is we take Sealed It, okay? This is a non-toxic food-grade sealing agent. Mm-hmm. There are no non-toxic food-grade sealing agents, so I have to make this. And it's made of a combination of waxes, and you can use a brush if you want, but I just like to use my finger. And what you want to do is just kind of rub it into the surface. Now, what a lot of people do is they'll put too much safety clay, Sealed It on the safety clay. You want it just to be really smooth. And what this does is it seals the clay. Really, when you think about clay, it's nothing but oil and very small bits of like sand. Mm-hmm. To you and I, like if you feel this, it's kind of smooth, right? Mm-hmm. But to the silicone, this is very rough. And so it'll embed itself in that surface, and then you've got to wash it off. It doesn't come off easily. So what I like to do is I like to put a layer of Sealed It, and that'll seal the clay. And then we'll just come right back. Do you want to try this?
Yes.
What you do is just place the brooch on there. Now go ahead and just push right down and just
push straight down?
Yeah, just straight down.
And just so it's laying flat on top?
Exactly. You see how that works?
Yeah, it just went, that was pretty easy.
Yeah.
It wasn't very hard.
So now if you look at the sides, if you lift that up, you can see that you've got a really nice seal.
Right.
See that? See? There's no gaps
right, and you don't have the gap
anything.
under there
Exactly.
where the silicone might go under the brooch where it was bent.
Right. Now, what we would do normally is just take our time and make sure that we have no crevices or anything like that. But for filming's sake, let's just assume that we've got a really nice seal all the way around our brooch. So, now, we're going to be using Copyflex, which is a liquid silicone. And we can't just pour the liquid silicone on top of this brooch. It's going to go everywhere.
Right.
And it's going to be an absolute mess. So what we want to do is we want to create what's called a mold box. Once again, what we can do is we can make that mold box using safety clay.
With the safety clay.
The greatest thing about this is that silicone can be expensive.
Right.
Also, you don't want your silicone mold to be really, really thick, because if it is, it doesn't bend well, it doesn't work well. We'd like the walls and the edges of the silicone to be about 1/4 inch thick.
So that you can flex it and that molded piece will come out easily.
And if you get a silicone mold and it's got this really thick wall, then it's very difficult to handle. So what we can do with the safety clay, and I don't know if the camera can capture this well, I think so. We're going to put the safety clay. It's really, what we do is we rolled out the safety clay, just like you would roll out fondant. And then we cut ribbons, which we will stand on its edge. And now, instead of a ribbon, this is a wall.
Right, it's going to hold in the silicone.
And then you can see that we have this petaled design, and we can make the safety clay wall conform exactly to that shape. Okay? See that? Mm-hmm. And so what we're doing is
And it's just going to stick to the bottom piece because of the seal dit that you put on?
The seal dit helps, and I am kind of pushing down.
Okay.
So you can see how
that's not going anywhere.
See that? And so the safety clay will bend and stay the way you put it. So we'll take that away and we'll come back with a finished mold box. All right? And that is how it will look. I'm hoping we can get that on camera. And you see how well we have this really nice gap there.
And this petal shape, this exterior line will be the shape of your mold when you're done.
So Sharon, when you do this, you're going to have a really professional looking mold that you could sell.
Very clean
to
edges.
your friends. It's going to work really well, and you haven't used a lot of silicone to make it.
You've conserved how much you're going to use for each mold.
Exactly. Now, you probably noticed that we have this additional flange around the bottom, right? And what we do with that is we take safety clay, and you can just roll out just like a strand, and I'm just going to cut this like this.
Just a little skinny piece.
Right, and I'm just going to roll that. And what I did was, once we have this safety clay wall down on the base like that, well, we can't just start pouring silicone in there. We don't know.
It might ooze out.
Exactly. We don't know if we have a perfect seal. So what we do is we come with this additional piece around the bottom, and then using any kind of a tool, what we do is we kind of press it down in order to make an additional support. Okay?
And sealing.
Exactly.
In case anything oozes out.
So what will happen is that the silicone is going to be pushing against this wall, but it can't go anywhere. See how when I push this side, it moves?
It moves.
But when I push on the safety clay side,
prevents it from moving.
Exactly, and it's a nice seal. So that's what I did all the way around the bottom like that in order to get that nice foundation and seal for pouring.
Great. Ingenious.
So now I'm going to show you, or actually, Sharon, I want you to actually combine the Copy Flex and pour this mold yourself.
Oh, great.
Okay?
Fun. All right.
So what I'd like to do is just tell you what we've got is we have 2 equal amounts of part A and part B. One is a base and one is a catalyst.
Okay.
Okay? And what I want you to do is I want you to scrape one part into the other. It doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter if it's orange into white or white into orange.
But it's just equal amounts. Okay?
And did you measure that by weight or with a measuring cup?
What I did was I measured it by weight using a scale.
A scale, okay.
Right. But you can also use volume measurements like tablespoons
that would work
or
too.
a 1/4 cup, and just really kind of scrape as much of that orange part into the white as you can.
And to do it without making a mess, you asked the wrong person.
Well, you get used to it.
Yeah.
It's kind of sticky.
Well, and I'm a mess every time I work, so. Okay.
So that's good.
Is that enough?
Yes, so I'll take that.
And then stir this up?
Now, that's what you're going to do is just stir it, and you don't have to be delicate. And what you want to do is you want to scrape the sides and scrape the bottom while you're doing that.
Okay. Because you got to be kind of vigorous there.
Right.
You're not worried about getting air bubbles in it?
No. The silicone has been made I make this so that it has a very low viscosity, meaning it runs very well, and then when we pour it, those bubbles rise to the surface and pop.
So
and
they're not going to stay in there. Okay.
But a lot of people ask me, why is one part orange and one part white? Okay.
Well, I guess so you wouldn't get your two parts mixed up. You want to make sure you mix the right things together.
Exactly. Now let me show you something, okay?
All right, I think I got it mixed.
Right. So we have the white and the orange, and when you no longer see any streaking, then you know that it's well mixed. But what I want to show you is, if we look at the side,
there's still white in there.
there's still white, see? And you thought that it was totally mixed, and that's a mistake that a lot of people make. So what we're going to do is we're going to take an additional step to make sure that we get complete mixing, because that's very important. If you didn't mix this and this unmixed white part went into your mold, it would be a very weak part because it never has combined.
And it might split later. Or...
Exactly, okay? So we're going to take a container just like the one we mixed it in. And what I want you to do is I want you to scrape everything out into this container.
Into another container?
Yes.
Okay.
And now what's happening is you're gaining access to the sides and the bottom, okay? And any of the unmixed white portion is going to come out, and it'll be on the top.
Oh, okay.
And then you're going to give it another mix.
So do you suggest that you use clear cups like this, or if you're going to use like a paper, drinking cup?
We never,
if you're going to transfer it twice like this, then you're going to probably get it. You don't really need to see it through the clear, right?
Yeah, just knowing that this is the proper method, it doesn't matter if you're using steel cups. You know that you want to have a third cup.
You're going to get it all.
You can put it in there and mix it all. So you just follow this double mixing method.
Okay.
Okay. Now, Copyflex cures in 5 hours. So that means that you've got plenty of time. This is called work time.
You have 5 hours to work with this?
No, it's 5 hours to cure.
Okay.
Okay, but it has a work time of about 20, maybe 30 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so you don't really have to worry, oh, it's going to turn to rubber, it's going to get thick. Okay.
So once you combine the two, though, you need to have your mold made in 20 minutes or it's going to be too late.
You need to be organized. You need to be ready.
Have everything ready to go.
Yeah, ready to pull the trigger,
Okay.
So go ahead and just scrape off your mixing stick. And now you can just be very sure that the whole thing is well mixed.
Okay.
Okay?
Put that there.
Okay, so remember those bubbles that we were talking about?
Yeah, see the bubbles on the top.
Okay, so see how they're rising to the surface?
And they're just going to rise and pop.
That's because I make this silicone so that it has a very low viscosity for chefs and cake decorators. We don't have the equipment to take the air out. So what'll happen is, as it's curing over 5 hours, that air is going to rise out of there.
That's great.
Okay? All right, so now we have our safety clay mold box, and it's been secured by this flange we put around the bottom.
Right,
which we
so it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, we covered that in the previous segment. So we have this really ornate surface, and what we want to do is, instead of just pouring directly on it, we want to make sure that we get every detail. And so what I want you to do is just dip this brush and paint the Copyflex into all the details first.
Okay, so you're making sure that it goes down in all the little nooks and crannies.
Now, you cannot do this step wrong.
Okay, well, that's good to know, because if you can do it wrong, I'm going to do it wrong.
And all you want to do is just apply it. And
does it matter how thick or thin?
It doesn't really matter. I like to paint it so that it becomes thin and you can almost see through that film, making sure that, around that centerpiece, do you see where it joins with the other petals? You really want to get your bristles in there. Okay.
Let me lift it up for a second so the camera can see.
I'll do that for you. And then, yeah, exactly.
Now I just got some up there on the thing.
That's not going to hurt. That's not going to hurt at all. And yeah, so let me turn it. And now you see where that center point comes in. Let me show you real quick.
Here, I got the brush loaded up.
So don't be afraid to really get it
you're really putting it down in there.
See that? You really want to try to capture every detail that you can. Okay. Now I'm going to put it down so it's easier for you. You don't have to be conservative. This is a really nice step just to ensure that you're capturing all the details.
Because we want all those little facets of the jewels and the...
It's the details in the mold that's going to make it for you.
That's really going to come out later when we do our painting and our dusting. You're going to see how great all these little bumps and dots and facets of the jewels. It's going to look great.
Yes. So this little step is a way for you to ensure that there's no air bubbles and that you've got it everywhere that we need it. So I want to show the audience something now.
Okay.
So you finished right about here, and you started over here. And if we get a close-up on that, you'll notice, see how smooth where you applied the Copyflex? See
it's
how
leveling
it's
out.
settled into everything.
It's settled into all the little nooks and crannies.
And notice that there is no air bubbles whatsoever.
No air bubbles,
So
you're right.
you've got this perfect first coat, okay? Now it's just so easy. I mean, you know.
Even I can do it.
Your 10-year-old can do this, okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take, and what I call this is a stretch pour. Okay?
Stretch pour.
And I'm going to show you how to do it, and then I want you to try it.
So you're going kind of high up.
You know, let's say this is about 12 inches, okay? And I'm going to now come on over here and look. I want you to watch the air bubbles as they go across the surface, okay? They stretch when they go through this needle-like dropping. See that?
So it's popping the bubbles as it goes down.
Exactly, and we call that a
stream.
stretch pour, okay? So I'd like you to try that.
Okay.
Now, let me show you something real quick.
Start or don't start?
Well, don't start yet.
Okay.
I want you to have your needle hit right here. I don't want you to start on an uncoated area, and I'd like you to try to make the Copyflex flow forward like a wave.
Okay.
And you stay a little behind it.
I'll
okay?
try.
So let's do that. Now, just back off a little and let it just kind of flip over the side and drop. Okay, now that's a nice speed. See that? And just, yes, direct the Copyflex where you want it. Okay? That's perfect. Now you can go a little higher, let it drop a little more, okay? Now you've got the whole perimeter, and what we're going to do...
Go into the middle now?
Yes. And I would stop, okay? Now when I stop, you can usually have a stick, and you can just cut it like that. Or this is not going to hurt your skin.
Right.
And so you can just, you know, wipe it off like that. And as you can see now, we have our mold poured. Okay.
That was fun.
Do you see now? We probably have to add a little more. See,
because
it's probably not thick enough.
The little center jewel there.
Exactly. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add a little more, and that's going to fill our safety clay mold box
all the way to the rim.
All the way to the rim. And then what we're going to do is we're going to let this set for 5 hours. All the air is going to rise out of it, and it will cure into a very flexible, beautiful mold.
Now there's a little bit over here on the edge that I just kind of push that in with my finger like that?
You can. And
while it's still flowing enough.
Oh, yes.
Kind of like when you're pouring a chocolate mold and your chocolate gets on the edges of the mold. You just use your finger to kind of push it in while it's still flowing.
You can clean that up, or what will happen is it'll cure into a membrane and you can just cut it off later.
And just cut it with a knife.
But see these nice big bubbles that are happening?
They're going to disappear?
Yeah, yeah. So we're just going to let that cure. It's called room temperature vulcanization.
Oh my goodness.
And we call it RTV for short.
Okay, let's just call it setting up. We'll just let it set up.
All right.
I can't handle those big technical terms.
And then what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll let you work this mold.
Okay, all right. So while that's setting up, we're going to go grab the supplies so we can make that big, beautiful bow.
Wonderful.
So hey, Dominic, you want to learn how to make a big, beautiful bow?
I do.
Okay, well, I'm going to show you how.
Great.
All right, the first thing we need to do is put our glue on our cake. We're going to put some ribbon bands around the top tier and then our big, beautiful fabric bow. We've got to put some glue on there so everything sticks, and what we're going to use is shortening. So I'm going to let you do that. Since you let me have a hand in the mold, I'll let you have a hand in the bow.
Okay.
So we're going to take some shortening and a brush, and all I want you to do is go around the side just like that and give it a nice little coating of shortening. You don't have to be really neat, and you don't have to worry about it getting where you don't want it. That's the great thing about using shortening as glue, because when you're done, any that's smeared out or has oozed out behind, you just wipe it off. The rest of it will absorb back into the fondant, and you don't have any watermarks or stains or any blemishes that are permanent on the fondant, which you can get if you use water as your glue.
How's that, Teach?
How was that? That was so simple and easy.
Cool.
Okay, so let me find the front, because I already have, okay, that's kind of a big glob there. We don't need to go crazy with the shortening. Okay.
Well, you said.
That's perfect.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to have my front, and I'm going to move this over here to the side for a second so I can just show you how we're going to make the bands here. Okay, I've got my blue fondant, which I colored this kind of sky blue. What I used for this was a combination of gel colors in sky blue and just a little bit of teal because that richens up the color just a little bit and gives it more dimension. I went ahead and kneaded in just a little bit of powdered Tylose, because that is going to help the fondant firm up and be a little bit stronger as we manipulate it so that it doesn't tear and stretch and distort. And I just went ahead and rolled that out to probably about 1/16 of an inch of thickness. So I got it under plastic because I didn't want it to dry out while we were waiting to get started. And I'm going to flip it over so that we have the downside up. And the first thing we need to do is measure the circumference of this top tier so that we know how long our ribbon strip needs to be. So wrap that around the top tier for me.
Okay.
And just make a match. And then we're just going to cut.
Okay.
Right there.
Yep.
All right. And that's going to be my measure to tell me about how long I need this band to be.
Great.
All right. So we're going to need it to be about that long. So I'm going to cut the two ends off. Grab your shortening again, because you got to paint for me again.
All right.
And put a little strip of shortening here and here.
Great. So Sharon, what's with the single glove, that Michael Jackson look? I mean, it's very stylish.
You noticed that, huh?
Yeah, I did.
I cut myself a little bit with the X-Acto knife when we were off camera prepping for this next segment, so I have a little Band-Aid and a glove on so I don't contaminate our work. I'm forever cutting myself. Every time I pick up an X-Acto knife to work, I always cut myself.
Yeah, bleeding all over the fondant, I don't think that would
Not
go
a good
over.
thing, right. So I'm the one-handed gloved cake artist most of the time.
So is this good?
That's fine. All we're going to do is just let the two pieces stick together as we fold it over.
You know, I never would have thought of using shortening
Shortening
as
is
the glue.
fabulous glue.
Really?
You can use it in so many situations.
That's really
okay?
cool.
So now we're going to just fold it in half. It doesn't have to be perfect or even because we're going to trim it. And then we're going to gently press it down. But we don't want to go too hard and lose our fold over look. So now we got to decide how high we want this first ribbon band to be because we're going to do a double. So I'm going to measure here in the front so the camera can see. And we want our top band to probably be about 1.5 inches tall. So I'm going to use that as my guide, and this doesn't have to be exact. And I'm just going to measure 1.5 inches down from our fold.
Oh, so you just keep the ruler lined up and just draw it across.
And if I want a little wonky like I just did, we can trim that when I come back. So now you've got just about the height that you want. I want a little bit fat right here. You can trim that. It doesn't have to be exactly precise because once you wrap it around the cake, it's going to look great. Okay, so now let me find my front. I'm going to make sure I'm in the right spot.
And that was just a spatula you used to cut it with?
Yeah, that's just a little small palette knife, right, like a tiny spatula. So now I'm just going to pick it up, and it's stiff enough now that as I pick it up and wrap it around, it's not going to lose its shape. I want to make sure that it's butting all the way down. Okay, and I'm going to turn it this way so both of you and the guys at home can see. Okay, and then we're just going to do just a little pinch like this because you want that little fabric-y fold look. And we're going to do the same thing here. It doesn't matter if that looks pretty or not, or if it's torn, because all that's going to be covered when we put the bow loops on top of that.
But it's already looking like a ribbon to me.
Is it? Okay, we got one more piece to go, and I'm just pushing it down to make sure it's butting all the way down to the base cake. You don't want any gap down there.
And so I guess the shortening allows you to do that.
Yep, you can move it around. You could take it off and do it over again if you have to. All right? Okay, so now we got to do it again. So I want you to give me another coat of shortening on the ribbon, but very, very thin. You don't have to put a whole heavy, thick
You want me to put it right on the ribbon?
Yeah, right on the ribbon, just on this, about halfway down.
Okay.
Below the halfway margin, because that's what's going to stick our second ribbon onto that one. And it doesn't have to be really heavy, just enough that it's going to stick together.
Okay.
And I'm going to move these scraps over here while you're doing that. Going to knead these back together just a little bit so they stay soft. We can use these for our bow loops if we need to. And I'm going to grab the second piece that I rolled out, put that here. It's just about the length we need already. That was kind of lucky. It came out almost exactly to the length that we needed it to be.
Shortening has been applied.
Same thing, a little bit of shortening down the middle of this one, so when we...
2 lines or 1?
1 or 2, it doesn't matter, just depends upon what mood I'm in that day, if I do 1 or 2, just as long as the 2 sides stick together.
Okay.
You're good at that.
Oh, thank you.
We're going to make a cake decorator of you before it's over.
It requires so much skill, you know? You're moving so fast that I'm just trying to keep pace here.
All right.
All right.
Now, do you think you can handle folding that over in half like you saw me do the last time without messing it up?
Let me add it.
Go ahead,
Okay,
see if you can do it.
So you want me to just...
fold it in half, right.
All right, yes. See, we used to do this with marzipan.
There you go. Just don't press the top seam too far down because we want to keep a little bit of a puff there.
Okay, so...
You can just run your finger like that. So you still got a little puff on the top edge.
Okay.
So now let's measure how tall we want this one to be. And we want it to be probably about 1 inch high.
Okay.
So do you want to try the little trick that I showed you?
Yes. 1 inch?
1 inch. And now make sure as you're doing this that you don't dig the ruler down into the ribbon. Okay. Because you'll mar it. Keep it above the surface a little bit so you don't nick it up. Because if we mess it up, you have to roll it out again. I'm not doing it.
Okay, so...
And don't worry if it's not exactly
So what stops
perfect.
it from... What stops it
Once
from
you get
tracking?
rolling, it's just going to go.
Okay.
There you go. I'll hold it for you because the whole thing's sliding on you.
Okay.
There you go. That's good. Move it up.
Okay.
Ooh, you put a little nick in it. We'll put that to the cake so we don't see it. Told you not to do that.
This is hard. No, it's actually quite fun. I'm trying to... You know, I think the lights are affecting the fondant a little bit. There, how's that?
It's good enough. All right. So let's do the same thing, and we'll just wrap it on. Make sure I got it centered enough where I can pinch it. And same thing, just push it down a little bit. This is, again, going to be covered by the bow.
Well, I think that ribbon looks great.
And then we do have to push it down all the way around.
Oh, cool.
Because you don't want a gap between that
So you really get that multi-layered look.
and the cake.
Right? You know, it has that 3-dimensionality to it.
Right. It does. It gives it more dimension and just makes it look more fabric-y.
It does.
Okay, so now we've got the second one on. We're going to take just a second, clean up our shortening, and we'll also roll out the fondant we need for the bow loops, and we'll be right back. All right, let's get those bow loops on. I've got my blue fondant that I already rolled out to about the same thickness. And I just kind of generally measure about how big I think I want the bow loop to be. And it's not unusual for me to I'll put one on there. No, it's not the right size, and then I redo it. So I'll use my ruler, or sometimes I'll just use my hand to kind of measure how long I think I want it to be. But we're going to have one bow loop that droops down this way, and then the other one that's going to come up. And we want it to be probably about 4 inches long. Okay. And I like them kind of wide, probably about 3.5 inches wide. So we're going to need to double the width of this because we're going to fold it back, which I'll show you in a second, so we get that pretty fabric folded outside edge on the bow loop. So we need to start with a 7-inch wide piece of fondant.
Oh, I see.
So that when we fold it back, it then becomes 3.5. So let's measure, and again, we're going to pleat and fold this and drape it so it doesn't have to be absolutely exactly 7 inches. You can kind of eyeball it and that will work just fine. All right? Move this to the side. And then we're going to turn it over. And the same thing, now I've got a lot of cornstarch back there because I'm pretty heavy-handed with cornstarch, so I'm going to wipe this excess off.
Okay.
And again, just give me a little bit of shortening and just kind of go a thick piece just kind of right down the middle.
Okay. Is that good?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Grab another piece of paper towel here because I'm going to use that in a second just to stuff our bow loop with. That's plenty.
All right.
All right. Now this time, instead of folding in half, we're going to fold both sides in towards the middle. So we're going to go about halfway like this. and then halfway like this.
Okay.
Okay, so now these are the pretty folded edges of the bow. Okay, so now we're going to take just a little piece of paper toweling and put that in the middle as we fold it over. Okay, and then I kind of hold it up and see about how long I want it to be. So it needs to be about right there. I'm going to cut that excess off. Need a little bit more shortening. Right in there just as glue to hold these two pieces together.
Okay.
Okay? And while you're at it, just give me a nice big blob of shortening all in this area, right here and down here, anywhere we think that bow loop's going to hit so it'll stick.
Okay.
And any excess that's poking out, we're just going to clean that up later. That's plenty.
Good.
So now to do the pleats in it, we're going to bend the two sides down so we get a little mountain in the top, and then this side goes up and down, and then this side goes up and down.
Wow.
And then we're going to pinch. And just make it kind of pretty. And I'm going to probably have to cut this little knob off. And then just gently up it goes, right kind of in that area where the bow and the knot's going to be.
Yes. Really looks like fabric.
And then just let it hang on to the side, and the shortening is holding it in place.
I never thought it would.
You didn't believe me?
Well, I mean, I believed you, but I never would have thought of using shortening as a glue.
Right.
I've taken fondant and mixed it with water and
Right.
create all these concoctions, but this is so simple.
Right. Now I'm just turning it to me so I can tweak it a little bit and make sure that it's falling right. And so you've got the shortening holding it to the cake, and then you've got your little bit of paper toweling in there, which is giving it just a little bit of a poof. And you can slide it around and manipulate it for a while till you get it exactly where you want it, but eventually that shortening is going to mix with the sugars and the fondant, and it's going to become a solid glue, and you won't be able to get it off. So it'll be a nice permanent glue, but for now it gives you a little bit of workability time.
Well, that's the best of both worlds.
Exactly. And if you do have to take it off, if you're doing something, even if you're putting fondant pieces on a buttercream cake, say stripes or diagonals or diamonds or polka dots or all those things we do on our buttercream cakes, if you put it on with shortening and you have to take it off and move it for some reason, you don't get that stain on the buttercream.
Oh,
it'll come right off, and then you can move it and do whatever you have to do, and you haven't ruined the buttercream. So it's really a great glue. And I'm going to do it this time so I go a little bit faster than you. All right, same thing, halfway. And we'll put just a little piece of paper towel in there. And after this all sets up, you just go in there with your tweezers and get your paper toweling out. And again, I know that this is going to be way too long, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut some of this off and then put it up there and see if I think that's going to be about right. So this one's going to go up there. It's still too long.
Right. You're wicked with that spatula.
I love my little palette knife. One of those tools I can't live without. Okay, that looks like it might be about right. So again, a little shortening here is glue. And then I'll do my same pleating. Up, down, up, down, up. And this is pretty thick because we've folded it over and it's doubled, so you really got like quadruple thickness of fondant right here, so it's kind of thick, but that's also part of that pretty fabric look.
Looks, you know.
Give me some shortening right here.
Okay. Right here?
Yeah, just a big glob anywhere, a little bit right there, just so wherever we put it, it's going to stay.
Okay. You're set.
Okay, now let me turn. I gotta trying to make sure you see it, our folks at home see it, and I can see where I'm putting it. So let's just kind of put it right there.
That's amazing. You know, when you're making it on a table, it looks like a bow, but when you put it on the cake, all of a sudden it just transforms.
Right, it looks like that big fabric sash.
It really does.
Excuse my head if my head's in front of your face.
No, that's okay. That's all right. I like just watching.
And I'm just tweaking it a little bit just to make sure it's laying, you know, the way we like it. So now we've got extra shortening in there. We could just take a brush that's not loaded with shortening and just get most of it off.
Oh, great.
But don't worry about getting it all off right now. You can go back and clean all that up and tweak it all later. And if you need to, this is kind of wanting to sag a little bit here.
Right.
Just prop it up with a little bit of paper toweling until it's completely dry.
So how long until you remove the paper towel?
I would leave it there at least a few hours.
Okay.
And then it'll be set enough that you can take it out. And don't worry about any cornstarch marks or ashiness. We have some cornstarch on here. When it's completely dry, I would say the next day, just give the whole bow a very, very light wipe down with shortening with a brush, and it's going to take all the cornstarch away and just bring it back to that pretty fondant luster look. So don't worry about cornstarch right now. We'll get it off later. Don't freak out over the cornstarch.
That's nice because you need this cornstarch to cut the tackiness.
You really do. And then I'm gonna put a little glue together right there to help hold that edge of the bow up because it's kind of wanting to fall a little bit.
And so this is just any shortening?
That's just regular old household shortening. So now let's do the big tail. Let's see. I got a piece right here we can do it with.
Okay.
Okay, and this I just freeform also. I don't really think about it too much. I just kind of cut. A rectangular piece, and then I'm actually going to use my X-Acto because my palette knife's getting a little gunky on the end there. And then just cut this on a diagonal so you have a pretty look to it.
She finally goes to a knife. Okay.
Let me recut that because that wasn't quite too clean there. All right, and then the same thing, we're just going to do pleat up, two sides, and just get something that looks kind of pretty like that. Give me a little shortening right there, and we'll hook it on.
Good?
And a little bit in the front so that when it falls over, it'll sit.
All right.
That's plenty.
Okay. Once again, the immediate transformation.
A little bit right here behind so that that'll stick.
Okay.
And give it a little bend up like that so it's got a little movement and it looks like, you know, the fabric is flowing.
Looks very soft.
What you think? Pretty?
Very.
Okay, and then the last thing we need to do is to put the knot in the middle.
Right.
And we don't really need to worry about this knot looking good or looking pretty because our brooch is going to cover that whole area.
Right.
So we just need to put something in there that's going to fill that space and give us the foundation of what to attach the brooch to. So we're not going to worry about it looking particularly good. We don't need to worry about that today.
It would just be like a band or something?
Yeah, just a ball or just anything like this that'll fit in there. And we might have to do it in two pieces if the first one's not big enough. So just give me a little bit right there, and we'll just stick that in.
And so you're making kind of a resting place for the brooch, something to attach it to, right?
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be pretty because the brooch is so big that that whole area is going to be covered. And if you go to put your brooch on and you find that it's not out enough, you know, let's put another little piece on top of it just to bring it up to whatever height you want, how prominent you want your brooch to sit out away from the bow.
And that also creates kind of a flatter surface so we can put it.
And don't worry about what it looks like. The brooch is going to cover all of this. Okay? So it's not perfectly pretty yet because we've still got cornstarch and shortening and paper towels sticking out everywhere, so it's a little rough looking right now, but when it's all dry and we clean it all up, it's gonna look great. So I'm excited to see if your brooch mold is ready.
We've got to find that out.
Let's go check it.
Okay. Now that we've put the bow and the ribbons and the bows on the cake, we're back in my area of expertise.
Back to the mold.
I'm done painting shortening. And now it's your turn to be the assistant.
All right, I'm ready.
So here, you know, we've allowed the Copyflex that we poured earlier to completely cure, and I want to ask you, how do you know it's cured?
Because you touch it and it bounces back and it doesn't leave a finger mark.
Perfect.
Oh,
yes.
I guessed.
Yes. If we were to, you know, if this was uncured and we were to press this with our fingernail or a tool,
it would leave a mark.
You know, you get a nice bounce. See that? That is rubber. That's silicone. It's
ready.
Cured and it's ready.
Okay.
Okay. So what I thought maybe you'd like to do. A lot of people like to unmold it.
Yeah.
You know, that peeling kind of a thing.
So
what I would do if I were you is I just get my fingers right underneath.
So we're going to take the clay off.
Yeah, well, let's just remove the whole project, and you'll see that kind of helps.
That kind of released it right there, huh?
Right, okay. And just pull it back.
So you're right, this clay never gets hard, it just stays soft. So can you reuse this again?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, so you can buy one portion of it.
Just get,
all right,
there you
it
go.
is.
And see how it comes out of that clay box?
Perfect.
Yeah, now it is the sealed it that sealed the clay so that it comes out. And I don't know if we showed this earlier, but I did paint the inside of the ribbon with sealed it also.
So that the silicone releases and doesn't stick when you try to get the mold out.
Now you see how clean the edges are?
It's beautiful.
You don't have to really wash it if you don't want to.
Looks like a cookie cutter.
Yeah. So now what you want to do is peel the Copyflex back off of the actual brooch.
And you just work it a little bit?
Yeah, you kind of go around the outside.
Here it comes.
It's kind of grippy.
There it goes.
There.
Once it came, started to come, it just kind of popped out.
Okay, so there we have
That's
an
beautiful.
absolute duplication.
Look at the detail in there. Every little jewel and gem and facet and nook and cranny you can see.
Right.
And make sure we can get it on camera so they can see that real good.
Is that a good angle? Yeah, I think we got it right there. Now, one of the things I want you to notice is the inside of this mold is nice and shiny because the original object was shiny.
Oh, really?
So the silicone will not only duplicate the details and the surface and everything like that, but it'll also duplicate the finish. That's important because if you poured chocolate in this mold, it will come out shiny.
Right, right.
So, or sugar.
Right.
Cooked sugar. And look how...
And if you were molding something that had texture, you would want that texture to be on the mold as well.
Right. So now we have this really great mold, and one of the advantages of Copyflex is that it makes what's called a block mold. It will sit
that
level.
reminds me of what I wanted to ask you, because I know you have several molding products. I'm a big fan of silicone plastique, which is the other molding clay, I call it, and I actually use that in my Fantasy Flower DVD, where I show our DVD customers how to make flower centers with the silicone plastique. So this is another option of molding material. Why do you choose this one over the other? Or why is this better or different?
You know, there's not a better. It's just different.
Depending upon what use you need it for.
Exactly. Like silicone plastique is so fast and easy. You don't need a mold box. You mix it in your hands. It's something really quick. And then you just put like a skin of it over an object. So you tend to use less material. With Copyflex, what happens is that you get a nice square-cornered mold.
Right, which you don't get with the silicone plastique. It's kind of just wonky shaped, right?
Yes, it's going to duplicate the shape of the object. So the silicone plastique would actually be domed like this. And when you turn it upside down, you know, you'd have to put it like in popcorn or rice to keep it level if you were pouring it. But now this sits level automatically. It's just called a block mold.
Gotcha.
So, how about if we press this in fondant?
Yes, please mold me a brooch so that I can... I'm itching to paint. I want you to mold me one.
So what we have here is we have the fondant here, and I think you mixed a little Tylose in this.
We did put some Tylose in it so that it would firm up, which will make it firm up faster. You don't have to use Tylose if you're going to use fondant in your molds. And you know, it's also, I think, good to note that you can use fondant with Tylose, gum paste, chocolate, or cooked sugar or isomalt with these molds because they're food grade and also temperature resistant for all those mediums.
That's true. But there is something I want to say about that. Fondant is made in order to cover a cake. So it has a certain tack, a certain elasticity, a certain moisture. Fondant manufacturers aren't making fondant to be molded. And normally what you want to do is incorporate more powdered sugar, or I really like the way this Tylose
adding the Tylose in, because it does stiffen it up.
Because it stiffens it up and it adds more body to it. And I would highly recommend that because fondant has tack, and even though silicone is a magical material and it's non-stick, nothing stops tack. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a little bit of cornstarch. And I'm
now,
going
if this was the first time you were using this mold, do you need to wash it, or is it good to go?
Yes.
Okay, so you would normally wash it, but we're just going to go forward for
we're on a time frame
demonstration purposes today.
And you know, this mold came out so clean that normally you would. You can put this in a dishwasher, you could boil it, you can wash it just like you would anything else. Just don't use like an abrasive pad or anything that's going to scratch the surface. You really wouldn't want to do that. No, what I want to do is I just want to use plenty of cornstarch, but I want a 1 molecule thick coating on the inside. That's how I like to say it. So you get the idea. None of these little,
don't want your
indentations
facets
should be
filled up.
filled, or the fondant isn't going to go in there.
Not going to take the impression.
And then what I like to do is I like to just start out with less than I need. And I'm just going to...
And then add more if you need it.
Yes. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get it to coat the inside bottom of the mold. Okay? And then I'm going to put a little cornstarch so I don't have any stickiness on my fingers. And this is where I'm really going to press into the mold, okay?
Because that's making the fondant pick up all those little details that are in there.
Yes, it's that high pressure. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more so I get a flush fill, okay? But this way, I know that I've forced the fondant into
all the way in.
Every detail, okay? Now, another thing you should do when you want to unmold is use the flexibility of the silicone. People just want to go bam and take it out, but go along the edge and see what I'm doing is
kind of release the edge a little bit.
See how
first.
that edge is just popping out there while I take my finger underneath and I pull the edge down, and I want this to happen so that when it comes time to eventually unmold this baby,
all the edges are released already.
yes, and it's going to come right out just about perfect.
Beautiful.
So there
all
we
right,
go.
tilt it up so the camera can see. Just stay there for a second.
All right. And
Look at the detail compared to that in the brooch. That's great. Beautiful.
so now you are the sugar sorceress.
I like that term. Okay.
And I give this gift to you.
Thank you. And I'm going to now paint it and show you how to make it just fantastic looking for our cake. Now I'm going to...
And I'll be your slave.
Thank you.
Give me a brush.
I'll probably
just...
make you do something with shortening again.
Okay.
I'm going to put this to the side because it is better to let your brooches dry and get firm before you paint. You don't have to, but it's just easier to do that way. Do it that way. So we're going to put one to the side. And so here we have one that was done yesterday, and you can see it's nice and firm. And we're ready to paint. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to try to recreate that jewelry look. We're going to do the gems in a blue color to coordinate with our bow, but we want the under workings of the brooch, I don't know what you call that, the setting, to be that silver jewelry color.
Right.
So we need to start with silver first. So what we're going to use is, hand me that little knife over there, or you know what, that tongue depressor would be perfect. Thank you. Just to get a little bit out here. We're going to start with silver luster dust, okay? And we're going to just put some in there, and then we're going to use vodka. And I'm going to pour a little vodka in this cup first, because if I try to go straight from the bottle into the thing, I always glop a big portion in there that's more than what I need.
So why vodka?
Vodka because it has the right evaporatability.
Evaporatability.
It evaporates rapidly
Yes.
enough that it's going to dry and it's going to leave a nice paint surface, but it's not going to dry so fast that you don't get a bond. It just
Okay.
makes a perfect paint.
And water would be too slow, right?
Right, and water is just going to turn the sugars in the brooch into goop. You're just going to get goo. You're just going to get a sugar goo, which is not what you want.
Great.
So I'm just going to add enough to get a thin paint, and obviously that is still too thick. Better to go a little bit at a time, because if you get it too thin, the only thing you can do is either wait for the vodka to evaporate out and your paint thicken up again, or just keep adding dust to it. But dust is precious, so we don't want to waste too much dust. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to paint the whole brooch silver first, because what I've found through trial and error is that when we're going to paint dual colors, we're going to do blue for the big jewels and silver as the background. It's a lot harder to paint each of those colors separately and have them not bleed into each other, or have them meld together, or have the white fondant showing through if you miss a spot. So if we paint the whole thing silver and then come back over that where we need the blue, you get a better look and it's actually easier to paint. So that's why we're doing that. So I've got, you know, a nice thin paint, and you'll know when you go to paint it on, it should be pretty thin. You don't want to see granules or clumps of the dust as you paint.
Boy, that covers well.
It does. If you do see a grainy or sandy or clumpy look, then it's a little bit too thick and you'll need to add just a little bit more vodka. And 1 drop of vodka can make the difference between the consistency being correct or incorrect. It's a very, very fine line. So, and this does not have to be neat or pristine because we're just getting a basic coverage of the silver. And that's going to give us our background color to come back and paint on top of. And that's going to give us a really clean, finished look when we're all said and done.
When you're applying it, it looks like you're putting a lot on, but it settles right into the details.
And it flows.
Yeah.
It flows.
Yeah.
You put a blob on, it doesn't stay there. It kind of flows with gravity. If it's thin enough, which it should be. If it kind of stays right where you put it, then it's too thick. You want to go thinner. And I'm also going around the edges here to make sure I get the sides. You want to make sure the side edges of the brooch are colored also, because you're going to see that when it's sitting up on your beautiful cake.
You know, the vodka must be evaporating right now because it's getting more and more detailed. It seems like the coating is getting thinner and thinner.
It does.
But still covering.
Right. So I'm going to lift that up so you guys can see just how that looks wet. Okay, so that needs to dry completely, and that's going to take probably to totally dry, whereas when we touch it again and do the next step, we don't mar the surface at all. It's going to take at least a few hours. So we go do something else and we'll come back to it.
Right.
So then we're at the step here. Let me just wipe this off my glove so I don't mess up the one that we have. So now we're at this step here where the silver is completely dry. I can touch it. I'm not marring it. If I rub hard enough, I'll get a little silver on my finger. But just by touching it and manipulating it, we're not going to mess it up. It's completely dry.
Feels very smooth.
All right.
Very
So
dry.
the next thing we want to do is take our pearl dust and our pearl brush, because adding a little luster pearl over this is what's going to turn it from just a gray paint to that sparkly, shimmery, silver, metallic jewelry look. It's going to transform it from just kind of a dull silver to the actual shiny jewelry look that we want. And you don't need a lot, and you can put it on as heavy or as light as you want.
So now this
Just
is luster dust.
This is pearl dust. Pearl luster dust, yes. And then just make sure. Pouncing is better because pouncing will give you a better coverage than if you paint like this, you'll tend to get streaks. So I'm not sure if the camera's picking that up, the difference, but it just brought it all to life and brightened it up and made it look more metallic than just a flat silver.
It's amazing.
Okay?
Transformation.
Right. So now this is ready to paint with our blue. So we're going to take our blue dust, or whatever colors that you want. I am painting with luster dust because the luster dust is going to give you that shimmery jewel look. If you paint with petal dust, it's going to be matte. It's not going to have that shine to it. So I'm just taking a couple of colors here of blue that I like, and it would work better if I put it in the right container. And I'm just going to put some blue, and I have a couple of shades here. I was experimenting at home to see what color I like, and you can do that too. Just mix some colors, experiment on some little scraps of colors, or make a couple of extra brooches, and that you can play with your colors and you know, decide how you want to do it before you actually go to your actual brooch. Okay? Again, we're just going to add a little bit of vodka till we get a paint. And I'm going to do just a little bit at a time because I don't want to go too thin.
You know, when you said make a couple extra brooches, when you have a mold, you can do that very easily. Just press and unmold, press and unmold. It's not something that you got to take a lot of time
Exactly. It'll take you no time at all. And then if you don't use them for this project, you can keep them in an airtight, you know, plastic container or a Ziploc or in a cake box somewhere, and they'll last indefinitely, and you have them for future cake projects, even if you don't use it for that one.
So here's the original. I don't know, maybe you don't need the original. You have a photographic memory.
Yeah, well, I'm not doing it exactly like that because I'm doing my blue jewels are in the middle, whereas their blue jewels are around the edge. I want that blue pop in the middle to coordinate with our bow, so I'm not really following that
So as
color
a cake
exactly.
decorator, you may take the shape of the brooch, but then you will give it its own color treatment.
Right, you decide
the way you
what
think.
color scheme and the way you want to do it and what look you're going for. Now, same thing here. I'm going to have to kind of, I'll show you what the paint looks like, and I think it's a little bit too thin just by looking at it. So what I'll do is, you know, take an extra brooch that I have here. I'll use this one that you molded for me, and I'll try to start to paint with it and see. Actually, looks like it might be okay.
I like it.
And see if it's flowing, or if you put it on and it just runs and seeps into the other lines, it's too thin. and it's going to not stay on that jewel part. It's going to run into parts that you don't want. But you also don't want it so thick that when you put it down, it just looks like a clump. So this looks like it's just about right. So let me take this one that we pearled, and we're going to go right over the top of that. And to do the little center part in here, I'll show you on this one if you can see. The center has a little jewel and then some filigree. So we want just that little hole, that little dot on the top to be blue. So we're going to kind of just let a big drop on the tip of the brush just kind of fall onto it, and then just coax it down to the edge.
Okay.
And it'll kind of naturally fall into where the groove of where that center gem was in the mold. Okay?
Yeah, that looks real nice.
And then I also, this is kind of a good example, a little bit of it ran over right here. So I'm just going to wipe off my brush so that it's clean, and I can just go over right there and take that off. And just take off my little bit of a drip over. And it doesn't really look like I'm taking off the silver underneath it, but if you do happen to take off some of the silver underneath when you're cleaning it up, just let this dry and then come back with your silver paint again, a little tiny bit on the brush, and you can just touch up that little spot if you had happened to take some off.
It's perfect.
Okay? All right, so now let's paint our big jewels on the side here, and I'm just going to load my brush with a little bit at a time. I don't want to over flood this center part. But the fact that it's all painted in the silver for some reason just makes the painting go better. It kind of just naturally falls where it needs to be. As long as it's not too thin, it shouldn't run and go over your lines.
So do you find that the dust, because it's particles, does it tend to collect at the bottom of your vodka?
It does.
Do you have to stir it?
You do have to stir it almost every couple of times you dip the paintbrush in there, because it does settle down at the bottom. And also, as you're working, if you're working for a long time, the vodka evaporates, and your paint will get too thick, so you might have to add a little bit more.
And it evaporates right in your face. Have you ever felt the effects?
Right there. You're not supposed to drink it while you're working.
Well, no, we're just working with it. No, I don't smell anything at all. It really is just, seems to be the perfect solvent,
Right. And it's really shiny and wet looking now because it's wet and the vodka hasn't totally evaporated. But as it dries, it's going to lose that wet look, but it'll still keep the shimmery luster look. Now, I'm not going to go all the way around and do all 6 of this because that would be too boring for everybody to watch. But that is how you get those center parts painted. Okay? And
Beautiful.
then if you want to, which I did on my final product and I'll show you, there were jewels on our real brooch. Let's grab it. I'm going to reach in front of you here.
That's all
our
right.
real brooch had little jewels around the big ones. So we're going to accentuate each of those little bumps with a little bit of blue too. Now we have to handle that a little bit differently.
Because it's so small?
Right. We have to make our paint thicker. So I'm going to use, and I only need a little bitty bit, so I'm going to use the cap here, and I'm going to add, I need another little knife or something so that I can add more dust to it, wrong color, because I need it to be kind of thick. Really thick. You would not be able to paint with this. We want it so thick that it's kind of clumpy.
You're just going to stipple it on.
I'm going to stipple it on. You read my mind with a stylus, which is a tool that has a point on it, which I'll show you in just a second. But first I got to make sure I get my paint thick enough. All right, you see how thick that is?
Yeah.
It's just kind of staying where I put it. It's not running, it's not flowing.
Yeah. Looks like mustard.
Blue mustard.
Blue mustard.
Okay, and so here is my stippling tool. I think this might actually be a sewing tool for quilting or something. So I'm going to take, because we really want to do just little pinpoint dots. So we're going to use our little stylus tool and get some of the blue on the end, and then you just come over it pretty much at a 90-degree angle and touch it, and the blue will transfer. Now sometimes, like right now, it doesn't come off the tool the first time. You just got to kind of load it a little bit more till you get enough on there, and then it'll come off. And you just tap it a couple of times, and the color will come off. And I'm going to do a couple of these, and then I'll hold it up so folks at home can see the effect that we're getting, because this is really tiny, tiny work that I'm doing right here.
Oh, yeah.
And it does take a little while to go all the way around this brooch and do every one, but you kind of get your groove, you know, and you get the flow going, and it goes pretty fast once you get the feel for it. And if you feel like your dots aren't fat enough, just go back over them with a little bit more loaded, and you can increase the size a little bit.
Wow.
And this is where it gets tricky, because if this is too thin and it runs, you're basically going to ruin the look of your whole brooch, because you don't want to have, you know, the running blue on this outer edge. But do you know what you can do if you just totally mess up your brooch and it's beyond repair with your painting job? Do you know what you can do? Do you have to throw it away?
Paint it silver again.
No, because if you paint silver over it, then it's going to mix with the blue, and then you're just going to have a light blue brooch. Do you know?
You can eat it.
Yes, you could eat it, but what you can actually do is just take a paper towel and saturate it really, really wet with vodka, and just give the whole brooch a bath. And just rub really hard and just keep doing that, and you'll get all the luster dust off until you get back to your white. And it'll be wet and sticky for a while, but just put it to the side and let it dry, and it'll be good as new, and you can start over, so you don't have to throw it away.
It doesn't soak the fondant or soften the fondant
It
when
will,
you do that?
just for a few minutes. It'll be soft on the top, but you know, you're not soaking the whole thing all the way through. Now that's kind of a lot of trouble. It's easier to just mold a whole bunch of extras that you have backup, so that if you mess up, you just grab a new one. But there are times when I don't have the extra, or I've gone through all my other ones, or I've broken all the other ones, and I'm desperate, and I have to redo it, so then I'll wash it, let it dry, and start over. So that's a tip. You don't have to necessarily throw it away if you mess it up.
I probably would have thrown it away.
So now I'm going to hold it up just so you guys can see the little bitty dots that we did.
It's beautiful.
Okay, so now let me grab my finished one, because I don't want to do that whole thing on camera there and, like I said, bore you guys. So here's one that's completely done, same technique. And then if you want to, when you completely finish painting it, and I think I did it on this one also, you can go over it again with a very, very light pouncing of your pearl dust. But make it very, very light, because the pearl is white, and if you put it on too heavy over your blue, you're going to blunt your blue, and you're going to change your blue color to something lighter that you don't want.
I think that's just absolutely beautiful.
Isn't that gorgeous?
And you know it's going to look fabulous on the cake.
You know when you put it on the cake, it's going to look great. And it's got that shimmer to it. We've got all the detail in it that the mold had. We brought that back with our luster dust and our painting, and it actually looks like a beautiful piece of jewelry made out of sugar.
I don't know which one I like better.
I like mine better. So I think we're done. Let's clean up, go get the cake, put the brooch on, and see how it looks.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, Dom, so you ready to see how our brooch looks on the cake?
I've been waiting.
Okay, let's put it on.
I think it's going to be very dramatic.
All right, now in real life, I would use probably melted chocolate to glue this on, but I don't have any on hand. So
wait, the shortening's my job.
Oh, that's right.
Okay,
There you go.
All right.
Just put a little finger dab, kind of a glob right in the middle that'll hold it. This is not what I would use for permanent glue. I would use chocolate or royal icing, but we're just going to use that today for purposes. I'm going to turn it around so I can see how I'm putting it on.
Oh, it's amazing.
And then
that looks fantastic.
Turn it around and let you guys
don't show
see how gorgeous it looks.
Wow.
Isn't that beautiful? So striking. Simple, elegant cake, but really, I mean, a lot of wow factor.
It is. Stunning.
And what's amazing to me is that we took this jewelry brooch and then made our own version of it out of sugar, which looks just as beautiful in my opinion. And we learned how to make our own custom mold for brooches or anything else that we'd want to
Yeah,
make. So if you guys want to learn even more about making your own molds for any kind of object that you can think of, be sure to visit makeyourownmolds.com.
And if you want to learn everything about cake decorating, make sure you go to sugaredproductions.com.
I had a really good time.
You know, I did too.
It was a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed it too. Bye now.